What is up, YouTube? And today we are talking about the new healer that just came out, Fuqiu, who is all the rage right now. And I'm just gonna be talking about how you guys are gonna want to build her for content, for general purpose, and what matrices and stat priorities you should be going for. Now, as a character, she doesn't really need any lattices. Of course, having lattices will help, but she doesn't really need it to work. And she is a very powerful healer and sustainer. And I think people don't really know how to build her that well, so that's why they might be struggling to see the value in her. But if you build her properly, she's going to be super strong. So her S3 is Moonlit Tides. This is basically a 2-turn AoE shield that is very thick. It scales with her max health. So automatically you're going to want to build her on very high HP. And it also applies Moonlit Veil to herself. And Moonlit Veil is going to be an effect, like an aura effect on her. And whenever an ally takes a turn when she's in this aura effect, which is like this yellow buff, they're going to get increased turn meter and heal for 6% of their max HP. And you're also going to see that this has a secondary effect that gives everyone a speed buff besides herself. So it's a very, very good ability. You're buffing your team's speed by a lot because you're not only giving them a speed buff, but you're also giving them this turn meter push. And also on top of that, you have this thick shield, which will also allow you to heal every turn that you take, which is insane. She also has this S2. This S2 is pretty unreliant because you have to max it basically to have the max chance to trigger it. But honestly, the damage on this is okay. You actually notice this damage on bosses, so it's an okay addition, but you can trigger this Moonlit Veil somewhat on your characters, and it's an okay ability. Not the biggest thing ever, though. So next we have her S1, so when she takes the turn and attacks, right, with her S1, 2 random allies' turn meter gets pushed. And the secondary passive on this is that when an enemy takes their turn, if she doesn't have Moonlit Veil, she'll get turn meter pushed. This will allow her to get back into her Moonlit Veil form more often, and if she already has Moonlit Veil, it will reduce her turn meter. So I think a lot of people read this, and they look at her passive, or her passive like Moonlit Veil passive, and they think, oh wow, you don't want her to be fast at all, you want her to be in Moonlit Veil forever, because that's what Valerian does, right? The thing is, she's very different from Valerian in what she does to the team. So Valerian has this S3, which has a cheat death, which is like the biggest reason why you get it, and it also has an attack buff. So this is basically going to be for quick fights. Fights where you're gonna get, hit very hard in the beginning because you're not gonna bring a lot of defensive utility, and you are utilizing the attack buff to win quickly. However, Fuqiu is a lot different because even though she has like the same aura effect, it's actually the exact opposite. She doesn't have any offensive capabilities with this. Sure, she has speed and cycling, but it's mostly going to be to actually get your cooldowns back up for defensive utility or to heal more. And so for that reason, you don't want to build her super slow because you're not going to be S3ing only once a battle. You're going to be S3ing a lot, multiple times every fight. In fact, fights with her are actually slower, but they end up being a lot safer, which is going to be the biggest thing about Fuqiu's strength. Now let's actually talk about her shell. So the best shell on her after testing is going to be Fortissimo. I see some people try to run like Supernova for like this heal over time, or even Artisan or Time Weave. They're okay sub options, but Fortissimo is going to be the best by far. And that is because you want to run her fast anyways, because you're going to play for multiple S3s. And another reason why you actually want to build her fast is because of Fortissimo. So they kind of sync together. And the reason why you want Fortissimo is because if you think about it, when you S3 at the start of battle, you're shielding everyone anyways, right? So they're not taking any damage. You're also giving them a speed buff and their turn meter pushing. So for multiple turns, they will not be taking damage. And you'll still be healing them, right? Fortissimo actually will store that excess healing and the actual healing. So if you do get hit, you still get, value out of this. And then after that, when Fuqiu takes her turn, if an ally is low enough, below 60%, she will heal all the allies that are below 60% equally using the stored healing. This is going to literally top people off if they're low. This is an insane shell because you get so much of that stored healing from her S3 shield, and especially if you pair her with another healer, this Fortissimo healing is going to be pretty much the best burst healing that you can get. So if you're running her with like a Ling Lo in like Aurora or even Doki Doki, or just any other healer, like even Mia in like Teramaton, they will do some of the sustaining, but whenever someone gets low, she will basically just top them off. That's what makes her super strong. Yes, her AoE sustain healing is decent. Yes, she has this really good AoE shield that's also sustained, that will be very sufficient. But the biggest thing is that when you're topping people off and keeping them at max health with your shield, you're still storing that healing in the shell. And then when someone gets low, you top them back off, and then you're going to be storing again. So this is what makes her super strong. If you see people saying that she's strong, honestly, I think like just 80-90% of those people are just saying that Fuqiu is very good because they're sheep and everyone is saying it. But until you actually try her on this shell in content, you'll see why she, like you'll understand why she's very, very good at healing and sustaining your team. Now, in terms of Aurora and Nikonana, red bosses, you want to put her on Amber. There's not really a choice. This isn't going to proc every battle, but it will up your win rate because in Aurora especially, you're not going to need Fortissimo's healing because you're going to be bringing Ling Luo anyways to help you heal. So Amber is just better because it allows her to not get one shot and she'll be able to tank a lot of damage for your team. And even without Fortissimo and Aurora, when she's paired with another healer, her sustain is still amazing with her S3. So that is going to be her best shell setup. Now in terms of her matrixes and gear pieces, because of what I mentioned before, because you're overhealing a lot, because you want to cycle back into your S3, and because you're running her on Fortissimo, you're going to want to run her on a Swift Rush Wellspring split. So you want Wellspring because your shield will actually scale with her max HP, which is very, very good. And you also want Swift Rush because you don't want to not take turns, right? You still want to eventually cycle so you can actually, you know, get your turn off to heal with your shell. Now, this is going to be an even better build. This build gets even more amplified when you run her with Doki Doki, because Doki Doki, this is why I say like there's a god combo, is going to be reducing her cooldown permanently. So even though you're cycling fast and potentially getting out of your Moonlit Veil, you'll still be able to use it right after. So you're permanently in Moonlit Veil while being fast, while constantly healing with Fortissimo. So this is why Fuqiu is super, super strong as a sustain, especially when paired with Doki Doki. Now, that's not to say you can't use her without Doki Doki. She's still very good. You can use her in a lot of areas of content. She just might need an extra healer alongside her. You can also even run her with something like Red Mia, who can actually reduce her cooldowns on her S3. You just need to make sure that Mia is slower than her. Or you can even run her with something like a Red Kazuyo, if I can find her, because she can also reduce the skill cooldowns of your entire team. So yeah, this is how I think Fuqiu should be built. I've tested her out in every single shell, every single threshold on Inferno, and this is the best one I've seen so far. And for sure, if you run her faster, you'll definitely see better results. I think people are getting baited right now to run her slow. It's not worth it. Just run her faster. Run her on Wellspring, Swift Rush, and you'll see much better results. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this video though, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.